While common sense conservatives are fighting to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this Prime Minister is promising a cruel April Fool's Day joke, a 23% carbon tax hike on food, gas, and groceries. This at a time when the Prime Minister has forced 50 families at CFB in Gagetown, military families, to go to food banks. 2 million Canadians every month going to those same food banks. 8,000 as part of a Facebook group where they share tips on eating out of dumpsters. Will the Prime Minister gain some compassion and some common sense and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting the least vulnerable in our country. This is the party that wants to cut the Canada Child benefit. This is the party that wants to cut support to our seniors. This is the party that wants to cut early learning and childcare, which supports so many families. They're opposed to dental care. They're opposed to pharmacare, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Fear and falsehoods to distract from the fact that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and neither is his carbon tax, which will cost the average Ontario family this coming year $1,674. $1,674 for a middle-class family that's lined up at a food bank, not able to feed themselves or pay their heating bill. Will the Prime Minister give his head a shake, cancel his cruel April Fool's Day joke, and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, no one here is surprised to hear the Conservative leader talk about fear and falsehoods, because that is what he traffics in every single day. It's his area of personal expertise. Now, what he is proposing is, at least he is consistent. He wants to cut the support that Canadians get, and he wants to cut the support Canadian families are getting from the price on pollution. That's $1,800 Alberta families won't get. That's $1,120 Ontario families won't get. Cut. All they know how to do.
Excellent.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So she just brags that Alberta families will get $1,800, but according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the carbon tax will cost Alberta families $2,943.
Amazing.
So the Prime Minister takes away $2,943 and gives back $1,800. Mr. Speaker, it's almost like he's a bank robber who thinks that he's virtuous because he tips the teller on the way out the door. Why won't he spike the hike?
The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader should know a lot about living off the public purse. That's all he has done his entire life. Now, when it comes to the price on pollution, this is entirely revenue neutral. The government does not keep a penny. It returns more money to 8 out of 10 Canadian families. That's a good deal for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
This NDP Liberal government has been trying to cover up the full cost of their $60 million Arrive scam. And after 8 years of this Prime Minister and his NDP Liberal government, they're not worth the cost or the corruption. And he's been hiding the documents, and we've been hearing the paper shredders, but his homework is due today. So the question is to the Prime Minister, at what time will he respect the common sense Conservative motion that was passed by this House and deliver all of the documents and the full cost of his Arrive scam scandal?
The Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As many ministers, including the CVSC minister, has said often, what happened during COVID-19 regarding the application was unacceptable, despite the fact that it was built in a moment at which it was important for public servants to be efficient and acting quickly. Unfortunately, some some of the rules were not followed, and there's more work to do, although much of the work that the Auditor General asked us to do has already been implemented.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Island, Rideau Lakes.
Well, what the Auditor General asked in terms of information, this government didn't even want to provide. That's why they voted against having the Auditor General investigate this Prime Minister's $60 million Arrive scam. It's clear that after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government that they're not worth the corruption or worth the cost. That $60 million, Speaker, was for outside consultants. It wasn't for public servants who needed to act quickly. It was for Ottawa insiders who are getting rich, being made millionaires while Canadians struggle and are now lined up at food banks. This Prime Minister's had weeks. He won't stand up, but we've ordered him to provide the documents. At what time will they be provided?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, our government has been transparent with Canadians and with Parliament. We've had officials, we've had ministers appear before parliamentary committees. We understand the concern that Canadians have around the appropriate use of taxpayers' money. And Mr. Speaker, in spite of my friend's pessimism, I don't share his view that this government will always continue to be transparent with Canadians around this matter.
The honourable member from Fort Saskatchewan, Sherwood Park.
After 8 years, the Arrive scam scandal has made clear again that this NDP Liberal government and this Prime Minister are not worth the cost or the corruption.
That's right.
Liberals gave GC Strategies $20 million for Arrive scam alone. Now, last week, Christian Firth from GC Strategies revealed that he got at least $2,600 per hour for subcontracting. Canadians are struggling to put food on the table, and Liberals are giving well-connected consultants multi-millions at $2,600 per hour.
Unbelievable.
Simple question. Do Liberals believe that $2,600 per hour was a reasonable rate?
Wasn't reasonable. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, there are internal investigations being conducted into all these matters. We welcome the report of the Auditor General. The RCMP is investigating some elements of this matter. And Mr. Speaker, if at any time people have misused taxpayers' money or contractors have claimed taxpayers' money for work they didn't complete, of course the government will demand refunds as is appropriate.
8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. And thanks to his policies, millions of Canadians are visiting a food bank for the first time in their lives. And as if prices weren't high enough already, this Prime Minister is planning a 23% hike on the carbon tax in a cruel April Fool's Day joke. But the tax revolt is happening. 70% of Canadians and 70% of premiers are opposed and fighting back. Like in Saskatchewan, where the budget watchdog has determined that Saskatchewan families will pay an extra $2,620 in the carbon tax. So simple question, where are Saskatchewan families supposed to come up with $2,600 to pay his tax?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for the former Conservative leader, and he is a proud MP from the province of Saskatchewan, a province that is proud of its Ukrainian-Canadian population. Now, last week, the current Conservative leader said in a radio interview, he implied strongly he would cut all economic aid for Ukraine. This is a chance for the MP from Saskatchewan to say, does he support that shameful position? Yes or no?
Yes or no? Yes.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
They desperately don't want to answer for the carbon tax pain they're causing Canadians. And no one is fooled by the ridiculous rebate ruse this government is selling. That's because Canadians know that the carbon tax rebate was specifically designed to exclude all the secondary costs that go up when the producer, the shipper, and the retailer all have to pay their higher share of carbon taxes. And the average income earners, the middle income earners across Canada, are worse off even after the rebate. $900 worse off in Alberta, $500 worse off in Saskatchewan, $600 worse off in Ontario. Why doesn't the Prime Minister show some compassion and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear the member opposite talk about the rebate, because that is what it is. This is returning money to Canadians. 8 out of 10 families are better off. It is revenue neutral for the government. But I noticed that this Saskatchewan MP a member of Parliament many of us on this side of the House really respect, someone who is proud to represent the people of Saskatchewan. I'd like to hear him say, does he support his leader's shameful position on Ukraine? Yes or no? The people of Saskatchewan deserve to know.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, food bank usage in Toronto is up 500%. Now they want to hike the carbon tax on gas, on groceries, on home heating by 23%, on their way to quadrupling the tax over the next 6 years. What a cruel April Fool's joke. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the average Ontario family will pay $1,674 of carbon tax. Where does this Prime Minister think they're going to get that kind of money?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians can see through these Conservatives, and they know that the only thing these Conservatives know how to do is cut, 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 and the people who suffer the most are the most vulnerable. They want to cut the Canada Child Benefit. They do not support dental care, which is helping the most vulnerable among us. They do not support early learning and childcare, which is helping make life more affordable for Canadian families. They are going to push, they want to push Canadians into poverty. We won't let them.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, they've already done that, and we're going to cut the taxes. If you give back $1,000 to an Ontario family, but you take $1,674, Liberal math says that's more, but real math says that's less. The Prime Minister doesn't get it. He's not worth the cost, especially for the 300,000 Torontonians who ate in a food bank just last February. They are about to hike taxes by 23% in less than 2 weeks. Why is she the only person in Canada who thinks that raising taxes will lower the cost of food?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the member opposite really believes her rhetoric about supporting Canadian families, why does she think that cutting support for them will help? Why doesn't she support early learning and childcare? Why doesn't she support the Canada Child Benefit, which has helped to lift more than 2.3 million Canadians, particularly children, out of poverty? Why doesn't she support dental care, which is helping the poorest Canadians be able to take care of their health and their teeth? That is Conservative hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
After 8 years of this Liberal NDP coalition, food has never been more expensive. In fact, food is so unaffordable that 50 active serving military families from CFB Gagetown are using the Oro-Mukto Food Bank. This is outrageous, it is shocking, and it is unacceptable. Right. So, for the 100th time, on behalf of all the Canadians and 70% of the premiers in this country, will they spike the hike, axe the tax, and make food more affordable?
Yeah!
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, that's an extraordinary comment, and I'd like to commend the member for being able to say it with a straight face. Because the fact is, Mr. Speaker, we gave members of the Canadian Armed Forces a very significant raise just last year. And when it came before this House to vote for the money for that raise, every single Conservative on that side of the House voted against it. Shame. Mr. Speaker, perhaps they should scrap the crap.
Shame.
I'm going to ask members to be very judicious in their use of words and to making sure, and I'll ask the Honourable Minister to be very judicious in his choice of words. The Honourable Member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
Mr. Speaker, that's exactly the lack of classy response I would expect from a Liberal minister. And the reality is he doesn't know what's going on because clearly he doesn't listen. These are 50 real families accessing a food bank under that Prime Minister's watch. $700 more in groceries a year for Canadian families. Low low-income families are most impacted. 1 million more users of food banks this year. Students, seniors, low-income families. Those are the facts. That's what we will keep fighting for. Spike the hike, axe the tax.
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, many people in this House profess to support members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and yet when it came time to put your money where your mouth is, they weren't there. When it came time to vote for a pay raise for members of the Canadian Armed Forces, every single one of them voted against it. Mr. Speaker, that's the height of hypocrisy.
Shame.
Before I move to the honourable member for Salaberry-Surwa, I would just like to remind all members that when you are answering questions or asking questions, you need to go through the chair. The honourable member for Salaberry